All right, we're here for question number
It's 7 seconds long.
47 of the Apologetics questions. We're almost to 50, guys. Today's question is stop, Trevor.
It's 6 seconds.
That's okay. Can Christians join the military?
Yes.
Trevor, if you play YouTube on YouTube, you create a black hole.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Right? Can Christians join the military? Why? Okay, all of you are just like, yeah, of course, duh. Why is this an interesting question? Did you know there's Christians who believe that you shouldn't fight in wars as Christians?
Because you're killing
Well,
me.
So what? Yeah, thou shalt not murder. Okay, we have biblical commands to not murder. So don't you if you're in a war, don't you have to murder people? Isn't that your job?
No.
Henry.
Yeah.
Can you design the weapons of war?
Yes.
Okay, so being involved in
Let's see what works.
making weapons of war. I think that would be along the exact same questions, right? You're involved in the machine of war. What if
But you're not doing it
what if you're just like a mechanic in the war or something?
Yeah.
like our uncle.
And you just like load up helicopters with missiles?
What if you're
That's all great and all, but like
not a
historically,
maid,
people
but
kill people.
nurse.
A nurse. What about you're in the medical part of it?
Yeah.
What if you're a drone operator and you're a million miles away when you're killing people? Does that make it okay?
No.
Yes.
What if you only kill bad people?
But what defines a bad or good person?
Aren't we all bad?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
What if you pay taxes that fund the military?
Ooh, what if our taxes fund military? Yes.
That doesn't
Why
count.
don't we tell the Ukrainians to just march around Russia like some Jericho stuff?
That's a long march.
I'm ahead of the game.
And why would we tell them that? God would need to tell them that. Okay, let's define some terms here, right? Riley, you already said it. Killing versus murder. Are they different? To kill versus murder.
Yes.
So what is kill? What is to kill?
To cause
Like
the
end
death.
life.
Squish the spider in your room.
Yeah, so cause death, right? So why is it why is killing different than murder though?
Because murder is illegal. Killing, it could be like in a war or something.
So we kill all kinds of things, right?
Murder
You,
is
Murder's like planned out.
yes.
planned out and like on
So murder, it has to do with it if it's legal or not, right? It's the unlawful, right? So murder is the unlawful,
But
premeditated
isn't being in the war
killing.
premeditated because you know you're gonna go kill people?
Could be. You could say it's premeditated,
But you don't
but is it lawful? I mean, it's probably unlawful to the country that you're
Yes.
fighting.
I feel like all killing is premeditated though. You have like a split second.
You,
where you're
you,
like,
I'm gonna kill a spider.
Well,
Like,
well, is there
I-
accidental killing?
Like it,
Yes.
Oh, like
Yes.
So there's another word in our English language for that. It's called manslaughter, when it's not intentional.
That doesn't sound right. Hey, what are you in for? I'm in for men.
And there's actually different degrees of murder and manslaughter. There's like first, second, third degree, which your intention and your purpose. There's vehicular manslaughter if you kill someone with your car, right? So
Ooh, this brings up like
it is interesting that kill and murder have different definitions, and I think they should be separated. They are different. Yes, Luke.
So if killing is causing the death of any living thing, is weeding the garden like a big
Murder.
So you could debate on the consciousness of a plant. This is like, yeah, what vegans just kill all the plants. Like, come on. They're hurting the plants, right? So most people, though, would say that plants don't have a consciousness, right? They're just little plants, right? Okay, what is a pacifist?
I don't know, pacifier.
they probably believe that like pacifists makes me think of peaceful.
Hey,
They don't-
one at a time.
Pacifists make me think of like peace. I don't know when I hear pacifists.
Okay.
I think peace. Maybe they don't want to go to war. They would rather.
Yes,
peace.
so it's a person
I
who
don't know.
believes war and violence are unjustifiable, that we should not participate in any war
Then why did
or
the Jews
violence.
do it?
We should play classic game of
So
chess.
the Jews would not be pacifists, right? So, but there are Christian pacifists, right? So do we see, the big difference here is kind of Old Testament and New Testament. we believe Jesus brought in a new kingdom, right? So in Jesus' new kingdom, do we see Jesus starting up an army and conquering his enemies?
Yes.
No.
With kindness.
Yes.
In the
Definitely did that.
in the end, but not Jesus.
He didn't.
That's what they wanted Jesus to do,
Yeah,
right?
they were all
They wanted
attempting
Jesus to defeat the Romans, but
to
he
defeat
didn't.
Their earthly enemies.
What did Jesus do when he was attacked and eventually killed? Like, how did he respond?
Let it happen. Question mark?
How did Jesus respond to when an army came to arrest him?
He healed them.
It's like,
Peter, how did Peter respond?
He attacked them with kindness.
Peter pulled out his sword and chopped off the guy's ear, and Jesus is like, no, and healed the guy's ear, right? So, Jesus, and it says like a lamb was silent, we led to the slaughter, so Jesus did not open his mouth. Jesus went along and with his own trial and eventually killing, right? He didn't rise up an army. He didn't fight back. He could have called down angels from heaven, right? He went along passively. So the big idea is, what did Jesus intend for his church in the New Testament age to be? Involved in war or not? We can absolutely see that God ordained war in the Old Testament. He was conquering nations that were evil, that were against his chosen people. But in the New Testament, there isn't chosen and unchosen people. The gospel is available to all, right? So you don't attack them, you share the gospel with them. This has been distorted too by, who's heard of like the Crusades and other things in Christians' history, right? Where we went on holy wars and conquered people to like unholy wars, yes. But holy, we define them as holy wars to go and build God's kingdom by conquering nations, right? Combine those things. So, what's a conscientious objector?
Your mom.
yeah.
What's a conscientious objector?
Someone who
It's on the
is
board.
opposed to serving in the armed forces and or bearing arms on the ground of moral or religious principles.
Who's ever heard of Andrew Garfield?
Oh,
No.
well,
He was in a really good movie called Hacksaw Ridge. It's rated R. It's super violent. I actually was going to show the trailer, but it's also incredibly violent. It's about a guy. What's his name? His name was Desmond Doss, and he is a Seventh-day Adventist, which is a Christian denomination that combines a lot of Judaism. They actually go to church on Saturdays, if you've ever heard of this. Seventh day, okay, go to church on the seventh day. They are traditionally conscientious objectors. They don't believe that Christians should fight in wars. He was a Seventh-day Adventist. He felt like he should go into the military as a nurse, as like a medical person, and he was required to carry a gun. And he refuses to carry a gun. And there's this big thing like, should he be forced to or not? But under his religious objections, he is allowed to go into, it's World War II, and fight in World War II without carrying a weapon. He goes as medical, right? He's a medic in the army. He is the only conscientious objector to ever receive the Medal of Honor, which is like one of the highest awards you can get in the military. This is a true story. Because he is in a situation where they're on the front lines, and then the soldiers all pull back, but they leave behind a ton of wounded men on this ridge, and there's this cliff. It's a true story. Hacksaw, the movie's called Hacksaw Ridge. It's super violent. I don't know. We could try it.
Wait, doesn't he like?
It's real. It's violent because it's real. So what he does is, after the army pulls back, he goes in all by himself and rescues something like 45 guys off the front lines who are wounded and drags them back, legs blown off and stuff, and lowers them down this cliff. And he does it all night. And so he receives the Medal of Honor. And it's the whole thing is like, these guys are like, you can't protect me because you don't have a gun. Like, they're so, like, they can't stand this guy that's with them. They think it's bad that he's on their force without a weapon, but he's choosing not to fight, not to kill, only to save. Anyway, very interesting story. And yeah. So that's what a conscientious objector is. All right, here are some of the challenges. This is why it's in question. This is why it's an interesting question. Isn't killing someone in war a murder?
No.
Wow.
You don't know them.
You have to know them to murder them? If you run over someone in the street, it's still manslaughter just because you don't know them. I mean, we could say it's not premeditated, so it does change the degrees of murder, right? But if it's still murder if it's an unlawful killing.
Well, no, I did a class.
All right, we have down.
It's not murder.
We also have down like the Old Testament armies, right? What about King David? What kind of man was King David?
He was a war.
He killed lots of people. Like they even had songs about how many people he killed, right? They're like Saul kills his 1,000, but David kills his 10,000s. He was a man of war, right? From killing Goliath on, he killed a lot. What?
Never mind.
Oh, don't write the short answer
Don't
yet.
write the
Yes.
short answer yet.
Okay.
Save it.
That's all I was
For,
telling you.
yeah.
Save it.
Not murder if
Yeah, so save it for
So King David, and how is King David known?
He was a great.
No.
He was a man after God's own heart.
Man after God's own heart, right? So how can this man of war be as a man after God's own heart? Lincoln.
I have a question.
Yes.
About the whole manslaughter and murder. So they say manslaughter is like it's like you didn't intentionally kill someone if you're in a car crash, but what's like you have self-defense, like at your house and you have a gun, you kill someone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that considered murder or manslaughter? Because like you intentionally.
It depends, right? Yeah, it is intentional, but the reason for it, self-defense, is a reason for it to be killing, not murder. In some situations, it has to be in the right situation. Like if someone, Noah, do I need to move you? Okay, that's your warning. If you shoot someone in the back who's stealing your DVD player, like that is not self-defense, right? And so there's different legal dilemmas. We don't have, it's called castle doctrine, where you can you protect your own home and by killing someone? That is not legal in the United States. If someone is running away from your house, you can't shoot them. The only ways it can be self-defense if someone is intending to harm you or someone else, harm or kill you or someone else, and then self-defense can be in play, and then it's killing, not murder, and it is lawful. But it has to be very clearly you are stopping someone from hurting someone. There's actually, you can get in a lot of trouble just like defending your home from burglars, because if you kill them and there's no intent of them like harming someone, you can be tried for murder. So it's actually pretty sticky, and you have to know the laws if you intend to protect your home. If you have a gun and intend to protect your home, you have to understand these laws, because you can go to jail for murder, just killing someone for stealing your TV, because that is still murder. Yeah, Luke.
So, I have a question.
Yes.
And me and my brother
Maddie.
disagree on this. It's like, should you try to hurt someone, or should you, like, I guess I could explain it, like, say a kidnapper, like, grabs you and is pulling you into their van, and, they cover your mouth or something, and no one's around. Should you, like, try to hurt them in the least way or in the most way? Because I think you should hurt them in the least way. Like if you can like gouge out their eyes, or just kick them in the shins and make them drop you should kick them in the shins that they won't lose their eyes.
Well, this is even a police debated thing. Like, should the police shoot someone in the leg
Yes.
rather than shoot them in the chest, right? Which should they go for
Which
non-lethal?
one's the
If
easiest target?
someone's gonna kidnap you, they're gonna push you on heroin.
So, that is a debatable thing. Like, should you go for the least, or should you go for and I mean, these are gun things, but like with a gun, if you need to stop someone, shooting in the leg may not stop them, and it's likely for you to miss. So like, I don't know why we're talking about guns necessarily, but like for police and gun things, they are trained to shoot center mass, right? This is the largest target area, and it can kill you, but it's the most likely to stop someone. But if you're going to shoot someone, you have to intend to kill them, because you can kill someone with a leg shot, right? They can bleed out and die. So if you're shooting someone, there needs to be reason to kill them, to stop them. Like, it has to be justified, right? In those rules, because you could still kill someone with shooting them in the leg. So, I mean, a little bit to your question, like, you need to, but there is rules about force to force, right? Like, the force needs to match the force. But I mean, as a kid being kidnapped, do whatever you can to stop, right? Anyway, what else? Pacifists. What if you're commanded? Oh, here's an interesting thing, and this is what I really want to talk about too. What if you're in a war and you're a soldier and you're commanded to do unjust things, right? What about Nazi soldiers, or what about soldiers who, even in American wars, I'm sure, like in Vietnam, there's stories of like, they would go into villages. This is why that war was protested. Like there's you could have an evil commander or an evil sergeant or whatever that is commanding you to do things that are against your conscience, and again, what God is doing to you or would want you to do. So should you obey? Like, when you're in the military, you're forced to obey your authorities, right? So should your conscience, what you believe is right and wrong, still have a part in what you do in the military if you join the military? And this is where it could be a sticky subject for this question. What if you're told to do something that you believe is wrong?
You tell them no. Say no. But I'm not doing that.
And then they might fire you or kill you, right? Like, so, like in certain, we're very, very much. Oh, that's on. The Russian soldiers right now, right? What if they believe, hey, I don't think we should be invading Ukraine, but they have to, right? They've joined the military. So how do they rise up against it? Like, we shouldn't be attacking civilians, or So I think this is one reason why you maybe you could have an argument for avoiding war, because what if you're put in these situations by voluntarily joining the war? You could be opening yourself to being under an authority that you don't, and be forced to do things you don't want to do, right? What happened to Nazi soldiers after the war? Did they just said, "Oh, we were doing what we were told to do. We didn't know what we were doing"? Were they let off the hook for that? No. There's all these trials. What those famous trials called? The Nuremberg Trials. Yes, where the people, soldiers and more higher up people, like if you were lower down in the command, but you could still, if you did things that were inhumane and unjust to Jews or whatever in concentration camps and stuff, even though you were doing what you were told, you are still responsible for what you do. You're still responsible for your actions. And so doing what you're told is not even, it doesn't get you off innocent, right? Yes, Henry.
This is why we shouldn't use humans in wars.
We should just use robots. That would be
Who
awesome.
controls the robots?
And then whoever has the most powerful robots win. That's a good idea. Georgia.
If you join the war, you should obey them, because if you're gonna go in the war, you need to know what's gonna happen. You need to say, okay, I commit to follow the rules. But if you don't, then you just don't join the war.
Well, you can join the war, and then a conflict that can come up, right? Like people who are in the war, right, or in the army right now, they don't know where they'll be sent. They could get sent to Ukraine, or you don't know. When you're in the military, you don't know where you'll go. And there's also things like the draft, where you're conscripted service and you're required to go. Like, should Christians dodge the draft and go to Canada or what? Like, right? Like, that's legitimate questions too. Canada has an army too, but like that's, when I think World War II is the last time we had a draft. No, Vietnam, we had a draft. Yeah, Vietnam. So this is the 60s. We had a draft, right? Where people were, not everyone, but people were getting their numbers called, and you just worked a regular job. And it's like, oh, you get a letter and you have to go in the army, right? So that's an interesting question too. Like, what do you do? All right. What about killing someone in self-defense? We talked about that some. Here are some Christian denominations that are pacifists. Seventh-day Adventists we talked about. Amish, Mennonites, and Quakers. I'm actually 25%. My grandma was Mennonite, so I've actually thought about, like, if there was a draft, I could claim Mennonite status because I am descended from Mennonites, but they're the Amish. They and there are in America religious exemptions if you are from drafts for religious reasons. All right, let's look up some verses. Who wants to look? Do you want to do the table thing, or do you want to do them all together like last week? You like the table thing?
All together.
Oh, were we all getting the table? Is there like a together?
Yeah, there's plenty. There's more than enough. Let's do the table thing. I'm going to assign a verse to each table. All right, this table, look up Matthew 5:9 and 38 and 39. And then Maya's table, look up Romans 12:17-21. Jacob's table, look up Matthew 26:52-54. The Kirk table back there, look up Luke 22:36. Noah and Maddie, look up Psalm 144:1. Dykes, look up Luke 3:14. And Bright's here, look up Romans 13:1. So, look up those verses, read it together, and then you're going to share with everyone the verse and what you learned and how it applies to this question. All right, let's go back. No, let's start to hear from you guys. How do I do this?
Look at us.
All right, what was your verse and how does it speak to this
Okay,
question?
we technically had 3 verses. Okay, Matthew 5:9. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God.
And then verse 38 and 39. You have heard that it hath been said, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. But I say unto you, resist not evil, but whosoever will smite you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also.
So I was talking about how we need to be peaceful and also have when I'm talking about turn the other cheek, have full of grace and don't automatically get revenge back. We also thought I was talking
So how does
about,
that speak to war and things?
well, we were thinking about more. It was more talking about, at least the second chunk was more about individual, personal. So we don't know if that goes for war and stuff. It was more individual, friend and or people.
So it could be more applied personally than to a whole country. Okay, interesting. All right, you guys, what was your verse?
You can warn evil for evil, but give thought to do so what is honorable in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. To the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. For by doing so, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good.
Cool. What do you think this is saying to this question?
We kind of said it's kill him with kindness. So,
And yeah, and I don't take revenge, but who will make it right?
Jesus.
God will, right? Vengeance is God's job, not ours. Interesting.
Don't really kill with anger.
Right. Yeah. Shouldn't kill out of anger.
The Avengers.
Yeah, we shouldn't avenge. Revenge is an interesting concept that is very anti-biblical. As much as I like movies about revenge.
What about the Avenger verse?
Avengers. The Lord is an avenger, right? So vengeance that's God's job. When we try to get revenge, I think justice and revenge are different, right? Justice is different than revenge, right? Is trying to someone does someone evil and you're trying to do the same evil to them to make them pay, right? All right, what was your guys' verse? Matthew?
Matthew 26:52-54. It says, Then Jesus said to him, Put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 agents of angels?
Of demons.
Not demons. But how then should the scriptures be fulfilled that it must be so?
Yeah, so what do you think this speaks to?
I don't think God wants violence to be a priority of ours. Rather, just put our focus elsewhere.
Well, Jesus had the armies on his side, but he chose in that moment to go along with the evil that was being done to him, right? For God's purposes, right? So sometimes I guess you could make an argument how do we know God isn't orchestrating things? Are we working against God by choosing to fight back, All right, Kirk's Luke 22:36.
And he said unto them, But now he had a purse, let him take it, and likewise his scribe, and that he hath no sword, let him sell his garment and 5-1.
We kind of figured his interesting is he seems to be saying that having at least one weapon is important.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of like he was saying, you do need to be responsible. Like he was going to be leaving, and he was like, you're going to need to have means to, buy stuff and protect yourself. And that just having a sword doesn't mean you're going to use it to kill people, but if you have that capability, that in itself will ward off a lot of potential threats.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just
So
if you're a capable person.
a reason to be able to defend yourself is he's not necessarily saying get as many weapons as you can to start an army, but maybe more of a self-defense, be able to protect yourself, be able to. And he's saying the times are changing too, right? Like
Kind of like if you know someone's armed and they know how to use their gun, you're not as likely to break into their house and go do stuff to them.
Yeah.
As if, for a criminal.
right, just the weapon itself is a deterrent to stop violence from happening. Yeah, interesting. All right, Maddie and Noah, what'd you guys have? Psalm 144.
Praise be to the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield, in whom I take refuge, who subdues people under me.
So, God's.
I'm thinking that it means that he doesn't win the battles for you. He more so helps you win the battle. He makes it easier for you to win the battle. He trains, praise be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war, my fingers for battle.
Definitely seem like God is equipping someone for war and for battle, right?
I was gonna say, this is King David, so it's
Yeah,
gonna
it
be
is.
more his physical ability, whereas it can also be completely relevant to our spiritual.
Uh-huh.
We are all built for war. Some of us, our personalities are built specifically for the wars that we have going on in our own spiritual lives.
Well, it is King David, so that's right. And interesting to think about, God was helping David fight wars and battles, right? Mm-hmm. And so it is an Old Testament reference, but God was certainly equipping David for battle. But I also think about David, and do you remember why David didn't get to build God's temple?
Because he was a man of war.
Because he was a man of war. God wanted a man of peace to build his temple. God used David and his man of war abilities, but also it wasn't the man he chose to build his temple, which was his son Solomon, right? Interesting. Dykes, Luke 3:14.
The soldiers asked John, "What about us? What should we do?" John said to them, "Don't force people to give you money. Don't lie about it. Be satisfied with your pay you get."
So soldiers were asking, what should we do? And they weren't told to quit the army, stop fighting. They were told to, be content and do what's right within their job, right? Don't accuse people falsely. Don't take advantage of people in your job. Do what's right, but you don't have to quit being a soldier, right? So that's not necessarily the biblical
That's kind of
command.
going straight.
No more USA.
They weren't told to quit, right? All right, Brights, what did you guys have? You had Romans.
Our verse said, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God." So basically, our verse is saying that we should obey our government because all governments have been given power by God and have been set in place by God. So unless our government is obviously telling to do something against God, then we should listen to the government.
Right. So that could apply to drafts and things, but you're totally right too. Just because they have authority over our lives doesn't mean their authority is higher than God's. Mm-hmm. So when they cross over against God's authority and they're telling us to do things God wouldn't want us to do, they're taking authority away from God. So we obey God over them, right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is interesting for the country we live in, whoever we find ourselves in authority under, we should make every effort to obey them if they're not challenging God's authority. So, I don't know, drafts and things apply to that too. I had a couple other verses I had. Some Old Testament verses, just, Numbers 31:3. Moses said to the people, arm some of your men to go to war against the Midianites, so they may carry out the Lord's vengeance on them, which was interesting that God was using his people, but it was God's war, right? God's vengeance was being done. Exodus 20:13, this is the Old Testament, or the Ten Commandments. You shall not murder. And then 21:13, anyone who strikes a person with a fatal blow is to be put to death. Here's a verse about self-defense, or specifically against a thief. In Exodus, this is Levitical law. Exodus 22:2-3. If a thief is caught breaking in at night and is struck a fatal blow, means killed, the defender is not guilty of bloodshed. But if it happens after sunrise, this is kind of weird, the defender is guilty of bloodshed, so in the light of day. Anyone who steals must certainly make a restitution. If they have nothing, they must be sold to pay for the debt. So there is even some Old Testament biblical laws about defending your home, right? And self-defense. All right, so we clearly have verses, that we could see, like Jesus said, turn the other cheek and things, right? So can we see where pacifists and what's the other word? Conscientious objectors would have biblical support for not fighting in wars? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what do you guys think? What's the answer here?
That they can, but if they're doing when it says if you plan to do unjust things or things that go against God, then you shouldn't.
I think the verses like that say not to turn the other cheek. I think that's talking more about personal things and feuds, which are wrong, and more like revenge and like tit for tat. I don't think it's talking about justice and evil people.
It's not talking about government action.
It's not talking about it. It is personal, right? Mm-hmm. So in our lives, when someone's picking on us and saying bad things about us, we shouldn't go after them and to return the favor.
One of the things in the Old Testament is there's a commandment about not killing or murdering, but God also told people to kill, who were like Jehu and certain kings, and we know he doesn't contradict himself.
So difference between killing and murder too, right? Murder, so war, just killing would be allowed in Scripture. God may even ordain killing of certain people, and certainly did. Yes.
Like in school, we just read about, what was it? It was Saul, and God told us, go and kill, who was it, the Ammonites or something?
Yeah.
And he said, kill every single thing and destroy everything. Kill all the men, kill all the women, kill all the children, kill all the cattle and sheep.
Yeah.
And then, of course...
And he disobeys. He leaves the king alive and some sheep, or some cattle, right? Yeah, that's stunning. I don't know. I'm so glad I'm not Old Testament. I think we do live in a different time where the gospel is available to all. We don't just have it's not just divided amongst people groups, right? Where we have God's chosen people and then we have the enemies of God who have to be destroyed so they don't corrupt God's people, right? We have this dynamic that we don't have anymore thanks to the gospel being available to all. So thankful for that. Betsy.
If Saul had obeyed, then Haman wouldn't have existed later on.
Yes, that's true.
Get back at the Israelites.
Yes, he's a descendant of that. Yeah.
Wasn't there this verse in the New Testament that said, if you're convicted of something in your heart, then you shouldn't do it? It was eating meat. If you're convicted of eating, unclean things in your heart.
Right, don't go against your convictions. It might be right for one and wrong for another. Yeah, I think that does apply to this subject, too. I have that in my final answer a little bit, too. My answer, do you want to write this, Betsy, now? My short answer to should Christians join them, or can. I didn't put should. I started with should, and I was like, no, that means that we all should if I answer yes. Can Christians join the military? And I put yes, but their heart should be in the right place. I think this is a big factor. Why are you joining the military? Right? If you're joining the military to serve and protect, to bring peace, right? Because we all know that a strong army, like you were saying, carrying a sword could bring peace, right? this happens on a global scale, right? If we make a big stand of Russia, like don't do that or we'll attack you, we may stop war from happening, right? So sometimes strong military force can bring about peace, right? So what is the end goal? Or do you just love war, right? Or to defend the innocent or good reasons to join the military. But here are some wrong reasons to fight in military. For vengeance, like, oh, I want to get back at those people, right? Like we even had that, interestingly, some in 9/11, right? We were attacked on U.S. soil. A lot of people joined the military. And that could, I'm not going to judge everyone's hearts for why they joined the military, but you could see some people, I think, could join the military with ill intent, right? Like, I want to kill those people who attacked us, right? And I want to get back at them. I think vengeance and revenge is a wrong heart and attitude to have, including for a reason for joining the military. Now, if you wanted to say, I want to stop 9/11 from ever happening again, right? To protect people, that's a legitimate reason. But to like get revenge and you want to go kill the people that attacked us, like just to get revenge, that would be a wrong heart and reason to join the military. So for vengeance or because you want to kill people or just, you play a lot of video games, you think it'd be fun to do it in real life, that's not a good reason to join the military, right? For the intention of killing people. And I also have here, you should not violate your personal conscience and should always obey God as your highest authority. So, yes, your heart should be in the right place, right? You should be desiring to serve and protect. And also, God is still your highest authority, not your commanding officer. If you're commanded to do something that is against what God would have you do, you should not do it. And that could result in consequences for you and you getting in trouble, but it's still the right thing to do. In things like situations like the draft, right? And I was talking about that Desmond Doss Hacksaw Ridge guy. I think there's ways, like if you're drafted to serve in the military and to try to avoid killing people. Maybe it's non-direct. Maybe you're loading, missiles onto a helicopter that do kill people. But I think you shouldn't violate your own conscience. And you could probably like be a mechanic or be a medic, or there would be ways to serve in the military that wouldn't break your own conscience and your own feelings of like, if you feel convicted that like and we've seen so many people be really deeply affected by war, right? War is a terrible thing. Killing people, even, it is an awful thing, and it could have, seeing death, seeing violence can really affect you. With so many soldiers that have come back from Iraq and Afghanistan with PTSD and problems that have that continued for years, right? So I don't think this is something we should seek. Violence is hurtful and harmful to us too, even to be involved in seeing violence. Yes, Henry?
Back to the question on what about all the people that design those weapons?
Well, why are you designing them? I would bring it back to the same reason. If you're designing a nuclear weapon to prevent nuclear war, right? Like we have nukes, not that we want to use them. We're the only country who's used them, but we are trying to prevent nuclear war. That's why we maintain a nuclear arsenal, because we have to have that as an option, as retaliation to stand up against nuclear war. So you could make do you want to make this bomb so it can, and you're excited when it blows up people and kills people? Or are you doing it, is your goal peace in this world? And I think that needs to be your goal, whether you serve in the military or design weapons. Your heart needs to be for peace, right? And that's why self-defense is also legitimate, because your goal is not to hurt people or to kill people. Your goal is to stop the killing and hurting of people, right? So that applies to the military too. And military is, it's also designed, I think America's military, right? Like, why do we go places? We're trying to stop wars, not start them. You could be in a different country where it's a Russian's military. Like, if you're a Christian in Russia, and you sign up for the military, you may be sent somewhere to do things you shouldn't. You would violate your conscience, right? So you have to be more careful. So it matters what country you're in too. All right, thanks everybody. Good